is repugnant in a free and open society. And we are, as a people, inherently and historically opposed to secret societies, to secret oaths, and to secret proceedings.
I think a new world order is emerging.
An inside job? How dare you? How dare you?
To create, so to say, mass-produced models of human beings arranged in some kind of a scientific caste system.
We shall go on to the end. We shall fight with growing confidence and growing strength in the air. We shall never surrender.
Good evening, everybody. That's if you're in Holland. If you're in the United States or anywhere else in the world, then it's good afternoon or good morning or whatever. I am Walter Hendricks. This is the event Fire Dance on Argusoog Radio. It's July 27th, 2010, and this is edition number 76. Today, I have a guest, and that's why I'm also speaking in English, which normally I do in Dutch, but I have a little information here about my guest. And she's called Rosalind Peterson, and she's California president and co-founder of the Agricultural Defense Coalition, the ADC. The ADC was formed in 2006 to protect agricultural crop production from uncontrolled experimental weather modification programs, atmospheric heating and testing programs, and ocean and atmospheric experimental geoengineering programs. Now, because of my own continuing research into aerosols, I came across this website, and I was looking for pictures of different kinds of clouds, because there were all kinds of maps of clouds, and I was wondering where to get one. And then I got in contact because I got an answer very rapidly. And I mentioned that I had a radio station and that we might be able to talk, and she agreed, and I'm really astonished to have her on the show here. Hello, welcome, Rosalind.
Well, thank you very much for having me on your show today. It's an honor to be on your show this evening. And hello to all your guests from Holland. We're a long ways away because I'm here in Northern California.
Yes, that's 9 hours time difference. Yeah. Rosalind, before there's two sites I want to mention. There's CaliforniaSkywatch.com and agriculturedefensecoalition.org. But before we go into any of those, I would like to give you the time to mention anything you want.
Well, I'd like to say that I started doing research in 2002 because I didn't understand why our skies were now having persistent jet contrails everywhere. And they were into white haze and man-made clouds. So I decided that what I was going to do is figure out why this was happening and see if we could figure out whether it was necessary or not to have our skies turn into mostly man-made clouds so that we had less direct sunlight. So the research project has carried me into working on this project a good deal of time since that 2002 date. Mm-hmm. And also it has enabled me to start two websites, the first of which is the CaliforniaSkywatch.com site. And then just recently, in the last couple of years, I've added my database website, which is the agriculturedefensecoalition.org. Mm-hmm. And this site will have as of next month, almost my entire research database on it for public information on a wide variety of subjects, including geoengineering, persistent jet contrails, lack of direct sunlight, health effects from lack of direct sunlight, and other issues. And so I hope that all of you will enjoy the website and know that a lot of it includes almost everything I know about any particular subject, including government documents that are available.
Yeah, I glanced at your website and I found it very impressive. There's so much information available there that I'm afraid one Fire Dance edition will not do to be able to cover all that. But there's a couple of things I would surely like to discuss with you, like the honeybees and the upper atmospheric experiments. And indeed, maybe you would like to discuss some current events like the BP oil spill or disaster, I should say. Because I don't have scripted radio. You see, we'll just have to make radio as we go along, okay?
That sounds great to me.
Okay, nice. So the things in the short pre-test we had on sound, I mentioned this term and you said, well, we don't use that term. We say aerosols. Is that correct?
No, actually I don't.
Okay.
What happened was when I first started doing research in 2002 on persistent jet contrails, the terminology that I was finding most frequently was either just the word contrail itself or it was the word chemtrail.
Yeah.
So I decided to see what this was all about. And what I found on every government document, every U.S. agency, is that the term was listed as an internet hoax or part of a conspiracy theory, and that there was nothing going on in the skies and everything was normal. But I didn't believe that because the skies that I grew up with my entire life, born and raised on a working farm, were not filled with persistent jet contrails, were not covered over in man-made clouds and white haze. And so I decided that I would go into investigating. What I found with the word chemtrail is that I couldn't get any public officials or any government body to look at the issue other than getting a response back sometimes from the U.S. Air Force that the word chemtrails was a hoax and that everything was normal. So instead of having the press do the same to me, in other words, if you raise the issue, well, they say, well, you just believe in a hoax. I changed the terminology to use what NASA uses and other government agencies of the United States government uses so that there would be clarity when I was talking, and also that I wouldn't be just accused of believing in a conspiracy theory.
Okay, so the correct term is persistent contrail?
So I refer to them as persistent jet contrails.
Okay.
Because contrails that we see today and have been seeing since the late 1980s persist for hours at a time. One contrail can persist for up to 20 hours. It can cover 4,000 kilometers, and it can just persist into this white haze, or it can turn into this man-made cloud configuration that obscures direct sunlight from reaching the earth. So I wanted to know what the implication of that was for agriculture, because I used to be work for the U.S. Department of Agriculture for many years here in the state of California. Thus, the 8 years of research into this topic to figure out why these man-made clouds would not be good for the environment. And I'm being backed up in my research with studies from Stanford University, from NASA and other government agencies. The IPCC even talks about it in a book called Aviation and the Global Atmosphere, where it talks about aviation's negative effect on climate and air pollution, and also on producing these man-made clouds.
Okay.
So what we've learned, one of the things that that we need, all of us, for plants to grow, crops to grow, to produce solar power, is we need direct sunlight reaching the earth. And direct sunlight provides sunlight for photosynthesis. So all plants to grow healthy and strong and increase crop production not only need water, but they need direct sunlight. And when you start covering the skies over with these man-made artificial clouds, you start reducing the amount of sunlight that reaches the earth. So that crop production will drop because of this cloud cover. So we do know that man-made cloud cover starts to have negative effects on the environment right away, and that it changes the climate as well.
Okay. Yeah, there is, I know of a project that was started around the 60s, I believe, in Israel. There was this man, and he was measuring how much sunlight was getting through. And he found out that there was getting less and less and less sunlight getting through to the earth. And I think he even coined the term global warming, but I'm not global dimming, but I'm not sure about that.
That is correct. You're correct.
Okay, I am. Okay. So this, but this global dimming then started even before this so heavily cloud creating, right?
Well, it started before, but what was taking place is we were doing a lot of upper atmospheric testing in the United States. Therefore, we were putting particulates and aerosols into the air like barium, aluminum, strontium, and other types of chemicals into the atmosphere in order to conduct upper atmospheric testing. And we were
whoa, this is going way too fast.
Okay.
Who is doing this barium, strontium, and could you please repeat that?
Sure. The United States for many years conducted and is conducting upper atmospheric testing. And what they did is they used rockets and the space shuttle to put up canisters loaded with toxic chemicals like trimethyl aluminum, barium, strontium, lithium, and other toxic chemicals. And so they've been experimenting, our government, the United States Air Force, and NASA, helping out, have been performing these upper atmospheric tests for many, many years. When you put particles and chemicals into the upper atmosphere, you are going to reduce the amount of direct sunlight reaching the Earth.
Yeah. Oh, I didn't know about that.
I have all of those listed under my website, all those testing and upper atmospheric testing listed under NASA. So if you go to agriculturedefensecoalition.org and you go to the site map under NASA, NASA, you will find listings of a lot of those programs.
Okay, I'm going to have to look that up, because if it might be my browser here, but if I go to agriculturaldefensecoalition.org and I just press upper atmospheric experiments, it says content will be added. Is that correct?
Oh, there's more content to be added, but if you go to the sitemap and go to NASA, I have most of them listed on the NASA section.
Oh, sitemap. Okay, there it is. Yeah. I see. Oh, okay. And these were these secret testings or what?
I don't know if they were kept secret particularly, but the press never covered them, so that you wouldn't see it in the newspapers and you wouldn't hear it on the television news. So for all intents and purposes, no one was really talking about them, but they did write about them in reports and university studies, and that's where I found a lot of them.
Okay. Yeah. And what the effects are that there's less sunlight, and there's therefore less crops.
Well, crop production would start to be reduced if you have a lack of direct sunlight reaching the earth.
Yeah. And
so when you put up, as you get more pollutants just from everyday burning or whatever's going on, in other words, if there's trees burning down for deforestation, then you're also reducing the amount of sunlight, putting more particulates in the air.
Mm-hmm.
So the process whereby we're putting artificial man-made clouds up means that we are even further reducing the amount of sunlight that can reach the earth.
Yeah. And but do you think that is has anything to do with the reason why they are creating these man clouds?
I think that there was an idea. This is speculation on my part, but I base it on research from a lot of reading, that there was a time when they thought that they would like to warm up the Arctic or warm up Alaska in order to get to its natural resources. And they would have to melt substantial areas to go in for exploitation of natural resources. So they use it by increasing the water vapor over Alaska through these flights which would leave these man-made clouds, because water vapor is a greenhouse gas. So they selectively warm certain areas, either by using carbon black, because that's an aerosol that will heat things up, or they will start to use other methods to create these warming scenarios. So I'm suspicious in my own mind that there may be an ulterior motive, but I don't have a document to prove it. But on the other hand, they say that Stanford University study recently came out and said that 20% of the warming over the Arctic and Alaska areas is due to these persistent jet contrails and the water vapor that they produce up there. So aviation is having its impact on, in other words, melting in certain areas.
Yeah. Huh. So they can actually make certain areas warm and then keep other areas cool. Is that what you're implying?
Well, if you have clear blue sky days where the sun, in other words, there's no clouds and there's no haze, heat will rise right up and be distributed, in other words, away from the earth. So it has a cooling effect on things. But when you trap them with the man-made clouds, according to the NASA studies, then you trap heat underneath them and you keep the heat closer to the earth. And that would tend to warm up certain areas where you would find these man-made clouds.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Are there any other reasons that you've been encountered or been told as to why there are these man-made clouds?
Well, that's a good question, but what I'm suspecting is it may be military communication systems are also enhanced by keeping certain types of ionized metallic particles in the atmosphere, so that they can communicate in, the Earth is round, so they can communicate instead of just in straight lines in a circular method. So there's a possibility from some of the items I've read from Pentagon reports that may be a possibility, that's why they're putting so many of these charged particles up in the atmosphere that reflect. We see them here as being almost a white reflective haze. And when the sun shines through it, the sun looks white instead of yellow.
Okay, so there's maybe a military reason for it. And is it then so that only on these, because you mentioned they could go to like 4,000 miles. Is it then so that only on such a persistent contrail communication is better, and that the other areas are still worse off? Or
I think it's only for military communications. It's not for communications like we think of it in essence, because they need to, in order to do certain types of communications, they need to keep up an ionized atmosphere. So this would be one of the reasons that they would be experimenting.
Mm-hmm.
And then the third thing is weather modification. The jets can, just having the man-made clouds changes the weather.
Yeah.
So it'll change climate, and so what happens is that just having the jets produce the haze or the man-made clouds produces these weather changes, which can negatively impact agriculture.
Mm-hmm. And did you find anything regarding these chemicals that are used having an effect on the human health?
Well, jet fuel emissions are highly polluting. So that's the first thing that you have to know, is that whenever you see a plume, it doesn't consist of water vapor, the greenhouse gas, and ice crystals. It is actually composed of highly toxic jet fuel emissions. And the Environmental Protection Agency here has many studies about the health effects from just the jet fuel emissions alone.
Mm-hmm.
As far as the other chemicals, I cannot separate what we know the military uses when it shoots up rockets from what jets possibly might be releasing. I can't separate the two, because I know that the rockets are being used to put up different types of chemicals, but I can't prove that the jets are being used to put up or release any type of chemical.
Okay.
Now, the jets, military jets, however, do release about 500 tons a year worldwide. This is U.S. military. They release 500 tons of aluminum-coated fiberglass, and that's chaff.
Yeah.
And so we do know that all the branches of the U.S. military service in every country release tons of this particulate, which I don't believe, from looking at all the reports on it, is good for human health.
Mm-hmm. Okay, I forgot to mention something because I'm so nervous again. There's a way to interactively partake in this radio show. You can go to argusogradio.org. That's ARGUSOOG radio.org, and there you find a chat link. You click on that, grab a name, and ask your questions in capital letters or remarks that you wish that we look at, and then that comes through here via the technician. So that was what I forgot to tell. You mentioned that it might be used for climate control. And do you think that it has anything to do with global warming, as they say?
Well, if you realize that when you put man-made cloud cover over us, that according to a lot of studies, there's no way for the heat to evaporate. So you can actually raise the humidity and the temperature in certain areas just by keeping them covered over with cloud cover, so that any heat doesn't dissipate and go up into the atmosphere. So you can hold the temperature warmer at night, or you can, in other words, make it more humid, because you've got this water vapor, which is a greenhouse gas.
Yes.
So they've been warming the areas pretty substantially in Alaska and the Arctic for some time. And now they know that a good percentage of that has to do with these persistent jet contrails and the impacts of aviation.
Mm-hmm. You mentioned water vapors. I have my computer crashed, so I don't have it anymore. But I used to have this link that told by the Belgian KNMI, that's Royal Institute for Weather, and they said that water vapor is for 75% responsible for all the greenhouse gases of all the greenhouse gases that we have. And so what do you think of the CO2 quote-unquote nonsense, in my opinion, that is being taxed on us because it's supposed to be a greenhouse gas? I mean, that doesn't make any sense, does it?
It doesn't make any sense because more and more of the studies are showing that water vapor actually takes all the other greenhouse gases and makes them worse because it concentrates them. So I'm thinking that part of it is that we're having natural weather events, cooling and warming cycles, and also that we're interfering with some of those cycles because we are adding so much of these man-made clouds. We're adding more aerosols all the time that we deliberately put up there. And also this has this tremendous impact on climate. So we're changing the climate through this process. And all of this has impacts on agriculture, watersheds, water supplies, tree health, and also impacts human health. So you may not be aware, but in the United States, we're having an epidemic of rickets. It's a bone disease that's when you have lack of vitamin D from direct sunlight, you start to have, children can have these diseases, or older people, where their bones become brittle and don't form properly when growing, or they can break easily when you're an older adult. So we're having an epidemic of vitamin D deficiency. Part of it, we think, because as we increase the number of the white haze, the aerosols, and the man-made clouds, we are stopping direct sunlight from reaching the earth.
And yeah. So, but you're from basically the food. That's the angle that you're looking at it from, producing food. Is that correct?
Well, I'm looking at it from the health effects from lack of vitamin D, and then agriculture because of a lack of photosynthesis. But the other issue is that when you put up man-made cloud cover and it warms the ground at night so that you don't have a cooling effect, kind of holds the heat in certain areas where this man-made cloud cover exists, what happens is that in the winter, warmer nighttime temperatures become greater, and you don't get below freezing. And when your apple trees and your pear trees and your fruit trees don't get a certain amount of hours below freezing temperature, that following spring and summer you will have lower crop production. So we need to have our skies clear so that the temperatures at night will drop into freezing so that we can have the fruit set hours we need for each particular crop, and therefore we can have good crop production that following year. Yeah. There seems so the photosynthesis process, see, everything that grows on the planet requires direct sunlight. Whether it's the ocean areas or the land areas, it doesn't matter. This direct sunlight brings us photosynthesis. It brings us vitamin D for animals and humans. And so we have a case here where we're interfering. When the jets fly over us, they're interfering with this natural process. And therefore, you're going to have increased health effects, and also you're going to have less crop production because the jets and these man-made clouds are not only changing the weather, but also they're impacting human health. So you have a combination.
They seem to work quite well together, doesn't it?
Yes.
So what are the effects then of not having enough vitamin D?
There's a list of about 40 documents under the sunlight section of my website. And not only do you have rickets in children, so that they won't have strong, healthy bones, but there's links to breast cancer. There's links to having mental problems if the pregnant woman doesn't have enough vitamin D in her system when the baby's being formed. It's associated with a wide range of health problems, and I encourage everyone to look it up, because you'll be surprised at how much information is out, how many government agencies are studying this at this time, and also what they're finding about relationships they didn't know existed before, because now so many people are having this lack of vitamin D in their systems.
Mm-hmm. There's two things that spring to mind here. They both have to do with the seeds, strangely enough. The personal question is, I came across this article that the fertility of men seems to be dropping amazingly, and there seem to be statistics also available from the site of the United Nations. I took a look at them, trying to figure out what it means, because I can't read that. It doesn't make sense to me. It's just a bunch of numbers and a bunch of boxes with the names of countries in there, and they call it a fertility number, but there's no description of what is a fertility number. But it's dropping. Have you ever seen any research regarding this? It's a side question totally, but...
Yes, I have, and they're talking about an increase in the herbicides, pesticides, and insecticides that all of us are now being exposed to, plus other chemicals. And as these increase, there seems to be a drop in male fertility. There's an association with them, and also other associations with certain types of drugs that are getting into the water supplies, which are also causing kind of sex changes in polar bears. And so we're chemically based right now so heavily that we're beginning to impact our own longevity as far as being able to produce viable sperm for men.
Oops. Unbelievable. Another question that came to mind has to do with the seed vault. Have you ever heard about this vault? Is it now in Iceland? What was it named? Garben? I just have a new computer, so all my I need to reorganize everything in Spitsbergen, and there seems to be a vault there of all kinds of seeds, set up by a Clinton Foundation, an idea based in 1952, I believe, that came from Rockefeller. Have you heard about that?
I've heard about that, and they're trying to collect all the seeds in the world, and then from every variety of plant that there is, and then put them into this vault to save them for posterity in case something happens to the earth. I don't have a problem with that, but I think what's happening to us is that we're genetically modifying so many plants. We're genetically modifying tomatoes, cantaloupes, zucchini and squash, rice, potatoes, all the basic foodstuffs that we use, wheat in the world. Pretty soon we're going to have seed companies so dominant that we won't have any other types of food, because they'll all be genetically modified and only triggered if we use the particular chemical company's chemical fertilizer, or we have to use their chemicals to get this plant to grow. So what happens is that the chemical companies have organized to make us totally dependent on them for our food supply. And that's why they're trying in the United States, these chemical companies, to patent all seeds in the whole entire world so that they own them. And there's some objection now worldwide to a chemical company being able to patent all these seeds so that we're dependent on them and we can't use them unless they approve and are paid. So this collecting of all these seeds is more or less, I think, to begin to recognize what they all are and eventually patent them so that they won't be available to all of the people of the world.
Mm-mm. Yeah, I did some little bit of research this afternoon because a friend of mine asked me to check this out for him. And I found out that they get loads of heirloom seeds sent to them, indeed. And I saw this video also of a man, and he said that, I found a very strange remark actually. He said that they're making seeds that are resistant against the climate change. And I'm thinking, what's going on here? This is a strange thing to say. As I was told, in the last 10, 20 or 100 million years, there's been more ice cover than the periods we have now. This is actually, in millions of years seen, this is very special that we have a warming period like this. Doesn't happen very much. Usually the Earth is covered with ice. So I think there's a grander force, so to speak, when it comes to the climate. And I think the sun plays a very important role here. But so I was thinking, like, he must have meant that those crops are resistant against the aluminium oxide and all the other chemicals that are being put in our atmosphere. Don't you think?
That's correct. They're genetically modifying them so that they might not need photosynthesis from the sun to grow, and also to be resistant to the type of chemicals that they intend to use in the atmosphere, like aluminum oxide. That is correct.
Amazing. Yeah, this genetically modified food doesn't make me happy. I mean, I think nature does a very good job at producing food for every living being on the earth. And I think it's very arrogant of humans to manipulate the coding of a plant and say that we can do it better. But there's an encouraging thing I heard, because I have a little garden, and I talked to a lot of, well, they're not really farmers, but they're people that know about plants. And I was asking them, because I want to make my own seed bank also, and I was asking them, how do I make seeds? Because I'm new in this territory, right? I'm born in the city, you know. And he said, well, just take the plant and let it bloom, and I'll show you how it goes. And he also told me that if you take those seeds that come from, let's say, carrots, that are that produce seeds that you cannot really use to have a next harvest, because the companies want you to come back and buy. But if you do that, you manage to get some of the carrots up, because most of them don't even come up. And then you take the seeds from that seed is trying to revert to its original form of what it was like to be a carrot. So it seems like nature is reverting everything back over time. That's a good thing to know.
Well, it's a good thing to know, but the problem with a lot of seeds even now is that what is happening with them is that they won't reproduce themselves anymore.
Yeah.
So when you get hybrids, you have to keep, if you buy only hybrids, it means you can't save seeds, because the plant itself won't reproduce seeds that will be viable. And this is not good for the world. This is not good, because we want seeds to be able to reproduce themselves, because then it costs us less in the long run, because we don't have to keep going back and buying seeds all the time. And this is another way to get a food supply, make us dependent on chemical companies for our food supply.
Yeah. That seems like the whole world is run by companies, so that's not a surprise that they want to use food as a means to control the people too. So, there's a thing here about honeybees. Could you tell me about that?
Yes, there's been a sharp decline in the last 7 years in honeybees. We lost about 50% last year in all of the honeybees across the United States. And in some areas right now, like in Southern California, they're dying by the thousands, and people are just picking them up off the ground because they're just falling out of the sky. They kind of act like they're drunk, and then they die. They can't get back to their hives, and also something is disturbing them. We're not sure exactly what it is, but we believe that it's possible that microwave frequency could disrupt them, a lack of being able to navigate by UV radiation, which they use to get to and from their hives and to the source of a crop to be pollinated, for example. We're also finding that many chemicals here in the United States that are allowed on the market are harmful to honeybees. So I put a honeybee section up on my website so that people could look at honeybees, get to know more about them, but also to realize that we could lose a great deal of our food supply, our flowers, natural grasses, all kinds of things that are pollinated by honeybees and other pollinators. And the decline is in bats, which is also a pollinator. There's declines in bumblebees, butterflies. And we're finding that many beekeepers here in the United States are not going to take their bees into areas which have genetically modified crops because they feel strongly there's a connection. And also they're not going to be taking their bees into areas where certain types of chemicals are sprayed now because the label says on the actual product that a farmer might spray is they say that it's toxic to honeybees. So there's got to be a change here where we're not impacting our honeybees, and the combination of all of these things could be causing these sharp declines. So Europe has been a little more progressive than the United States in banning some of these chemicals, but we have to realize that they keep marketing them, and they're also changing seeds so that seeds are now becoming a pesticide in themselves. So and are labeled as, instead of being labeled as a food product, they're being labeled as a pesticide because it kills, in other words, when the seed comes in contact with the ground, it acts like a pesticide. It will kill whatever the target is. So we have to realize that in changing our whole in food environment, we're going to have less food because there will be less pollinators available to pollinate the crops. And it isn't possible to feed the world by hand pollinating all of the different things that we use and eat at this time. So we could lose about 2/3 of our food supply if we lose our pollinators.
Oops, that's not good. Yeah, I heard about this bee decline, and I called imker. I don't know if that's an English word, but in Dutch it's a beekeeper. And I asked him, and he said, well, just call such and such, and he'll tell you. And I called him, and he indeed said that there was a decline of about 50%, but that was about 5 or 6 years ago now, that decline, and that since then populations have been getting back again. And I also asked him if he knew of any reason why this had happened, and he said that there were investigations going on, but that there was nothing clear yet indeed as to why these bees are dying.
Well, here in the United States, the total number of bees is continuing to decline every year. But the problem with the investigations is that our universities are doing investigations, but they're not independent of the chemical industry, which funds a lot of research. So there's worldwide research going on, but a lot of the funding is going to come from the very chemical companies, the seed companies, and those that want to keep using harmful chemicals or keep genetically modifying the foods. So when you have this conflict of interest, the bees, the true cause of finding out what's impacting the bees quickly is delayed because you have these special interests and that there's this conflict of interest. So a lot of times the chemical companies would prevent from being released any studies which would show that the bees their chemical products would be harmful to the bees.
Yeah, that's like Bush appointing the 9/11 Commission. Yeah. We're talking about Monsanto here. This is a chemical company that is grasping the world food genetic information. I've mentioned them a lot. And we have also here in Holland, there's another company that is also doing genetical research into plants, also a chemical company. And there's, I was told that there are now 5 major food distributors in the world, and they all work together. That's how it works at the top, as far as my research goes. Those big guys, they work together. And to be honest, the future doesn't look good like this regarding the food, does it?
No, it doesn't look good, and I'm concerned because I think that all individual countries should begin to not go into this globalization as we are now. Part of it is that when you globalize everything, you take control of your local crop production, you take control of what you do locally, and it begins to be marketed and used internationally. So the thing is that then these companies come in and they bring their pesticides and their fertilizers and all these things and their seeds, so that you can't use your own seeds anymore that you have that are native to your country. So there's really an advocacy, there's being advocates more and more coming on board to say, no, this globalization isn't a good thing because, and this loss of the seeds in a certain country is not good because then you become dependent on these companies for your food supply, for having, in other words, seeds independent of them. It's really not a good situation, and I think the countries of the world are going to suffer extreme, including the United States, extreme starvation in upcoming years because, 1, we don't have the diversity of seeds, and 2, the chemical companies will have such a monopoly that they can charge whatever they want. And also, the pollinators that we need are not going to be there to pollinate all the different types of flowers. All the amazing things we see won't be available to us anymore. So I'm looking at it that there's something wrong with this picture because all of us have survived on Earth for millions of years, and that we have had this wide variety of different seeds and different types of plants and things to eat. And all of a sudden we have these gods who have decided that they are going to control the type of food we eat, the pesticides, the herbicides, and all these unnatural products, and make us dependent on them. And I resent the fact that this is a monopoly that's getting smaller and smaller and is going to control our food supply. And I don't think that this is a good direction, not only for the United States, but for other countries.
No, it's not good for any of us. You made a very good point at the beginning. You mentioned the word globalization, and then you take it to the people itself by mentioning that it's going to come around to you, to your local area. That's what globalization is.
Yes, it is. And so that's why when someone talks about global governance, or they talk about, well, we're going to do things globally, well, it means that you're going to set up a power structure at the top, and the rest of us are going to be slaves to the power structure. Yeah. Because then we won't have, in other words, the nation won't be a nation. We won't have control over the plants that we grow, the food that we eat. It will all go into this globalized society for the benefit of some but not for the benefit of others. So I think that this globalization talk is not such a good thing. I think that individual countries should maintain their own nationality and their own sovereignty so that they have control over this rather than to give it to some entity that's supposedly going to rule everything.
Yeah.
And that's we got into the financial crisis. We started to globalize everything. And that's where that's why there's no manufacturing in the United States to speak of in certain areas, because we've signed treaties which allow us to outsource our manufacturing to countries and other countries for their cheap labor. This is not good either, because then the products that come back to the United States are made from slave labor practically. And so we have to not look at globalization particularly as a good thing, except for the corporations who want to make more money. We have to take this back a little bit and straighten this out so that we're not going in that direction so much.
You mentioned these agreements. I suppose you're talking about GATT and NAFTA?
Yes, I don't like those agreements.
No. Do you then also draw this conclusion that I do, that these people in your government and in my government, it doesn't matter, when they passed these legislations, they knew it was bad for their own country, didn't they?
They have to know that it would only benefit the wealthy. It would only benefit certain corporations. But I don't think that the government itself may benefit financially to a certain extent, but the people are going to find themselves more and more with fewer jobs, less funds, less ability to control their lives, because the products and everything they make are going to be, or not make, are going to be controlled by this globalization. And that's what concerns me, not only about the United States and some of the treaties that we're even thinking of signing now, but also when you start to unite under one umbrella and take away the power of the individual countries. This will take you down the road much faster to this globalization.
Yeah, well, I've bad news. You probably know, but the European countries have lost all of their sovereignty to Brussels. We are now under rule of the European Commission, and there's basically nothing we can do. This is following the economic union that we had, the EEG. And the same process is happening in the Americas. You got the Security and Prosperity Project. Do I pronounce that right?
Yes.
Yeah, and also there is an African Union, and the Asians, they also have the Shanghai Cooperation Organization. They're all getting ready indeed to go to one global and I used to say government, but indeed the word governance is better, and it's not a nice word, and many people probably don't even know what definition actually is tied to the word governance, but it doesn't sound good. That's for sure. Not in my ears anyway.
Well, it's not good in my views. It's like they talked about, the first President Bush here talked about a new world order, and the people of the United States didn't like that. So they changed the terminology to having this global governance, and to make everyone think that, well, everything is a global society, and that we will have a few reign over and tell everyone else what to do. Well, it's going to be a corporate society is what it's going to be, and just to take the wealth of whatever country, or to take the assets, or in other words, exploit the cheap labor. So this is not a benefit for the people, and eventually people are going to wake up, but I don't know if their countries can't, and the local governments that they have can do much about it once it goes full force. But right now, many of us are beginning to object to this global governance type of ideas, because I don't think that giving someone, in other words, a group globally, the power to control all these different entities and countries is in the best interest of every country.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Ooh, voila. Yeah, the bees are still buzzing in my head. Because I do see them still flying around here, luckily.
That's good.
Yeah. Maybe because I don't follow all those regulations, but you said that the European Union does have some regulations against all these chemicals.
Well, sometimes, but they're trying to undermine it all the time. And that's why the United States appointed a man by the name of Sadiq as a World Trade Representative. And this Sadiq was vice president of one of these chemical companies who wants to genetically modify everything. So we're going in that, where the Obama administration is pushing that at this time. So we're going to have to start objecting more strenuously here to this process. But people don't realize how far along the push has gone, so that people don't have the right in some places not to say no to this.
Yeah, well, actually, here in the Netherlands, they pushed through, as you say, genetically modified potato fields. There are now 11 or 12 of them. And when someone asked, like, okay, where are these places, then they wouldn't even disclose that. So that's not good, indeed. And lots of people are indeed against genetically modified foods, as far as I know, because I don't have TV. You know, I'm not in touch with what the most people think, actually. So.
Well, the issue becomes with genetically modified foods, too, is that not only will they not be able to reproduce themselves, but once you plant them in a certain area, they can cross-pollinate. So they can change local crops around them, and so that everything becomes genetically engineered, just because you can't keep a pollinator from pollinating one type of crop that's genetically modified and then going to an area that isn't. So the cross-pollination would eventually spread the contamination in other words, from the genetic modified crop everywhere. So this is a problem for putting it into one place and then not telling anyone where it is. Well, they can be exposing nearby crops to that genetically modified crop, so that you lose in those areas being not genetically modified, essentially.
Yeah. And not only that, I also heard that if such a thing happens, cross-pollination, you get sued by Monsanto also.
Oh, yes. Here in the United States, it's quite common for Monsanto to say that somebody's using their genetically modified crop, even though the farmer, the rancher, isn't. So they try to put them out of business by suing them and keeping them in lawsuits for years. So it's beginning to change a little, but not enough and not fast enough. So part of it has to be that we do more education here and also talk about it more, because the chemical company message is coming through more and more with advertising it in every medium, so that people think that this is the way it is and this is the only way that it works. And that's quite not true, but they want you to believe that they're God's gift to agriculture. But we raised crops long before they were genetically engineered everything.
Yeah. Some of these companies are Bayer Crop Science. I'm reading this from your site. Bayer Crop Science, Syngenta, Dow Chemical, and DuPont. I heard of one of them, the Dow Chemical.
There's about 12 of them, including the seed companies and including their subsidiaries.
Okay, yeah. Shall we go to a little music?
Sure.
Okay, it's going to be from Hungry Lucy, and it's called You Are.
Dit is Harige Zo Radio.
Good evening, everybody, or good afternoon, or good morning. I am Walter Hendricks. This is Argus Hope Radio. My event is called Fire Dance. That's translated from Vuurdans. And today we are talking about all kinds of things with Rosalind. Welcome back, Rosalind.
Well, thank you very much. It's nice to still be here on your show and enjoying the day with you.
Yeah. Well, we talked about a lot of things. Is there anything you want to get back to that you say, well, I should have mentioned this or that? Or?
Well, there's one subject I'd like to introduce to your audience that they probably don't know much about. But I'd like to talk about geoengineering.
Okay.
Most people haven't heard of geoengineering, or they've heard it on the fringe. People were starting to use the word more and more these days. Mm-hmm. And geoengineering is where you take and you can put up particles or chemicals into the atmosphere, or you can put particles into the ocean. And what you're doing is you're going to be changing the structure of, in other words, the skies. You're going to put the particles and chemicals in to reduce the amount of sunlight reaching the earth. You're going to fertilize the ocean to have algae blooms, which will supposedly help with global warming. Geoengineering, the idea that is being sold to us is that it will help us to reduce global warming. And that if we put up space mirrors and different man-made clouds that reflect more, we can direct the sunlight away from the Earth so that we have less sunlight coming down and reaching us. So there's now work in the United States Congress. The U.S. House Technology and Science Committee is
less sunlight. Can you hear me, Rosalind?
Yes.
Okay, so we have a little Skype lag here. I lost you when you said so that there is less sunlight.
So that there is less sunlight reaching the Earth. And these geoengineering schemes are being discussed by climate scientists who believe that they can reduce global warming by putting particles and chemicals into the atmosphere. And they call this solar radiation management. And this solar radiation management would mean that they would be deliberately trying to reduce the amount of direct sunlight reaching the Earth. So this geoengineering projects are being discussed by climate scientists, a few of them, in order to alleviate global warming. Well, in the first place, we're not having global warming everywhere all the time. We're warming things up, but we've got jets producing man-made clouds that warm up certain areas. We've got a white haze. We're putting more aerosols up, but we're also having normal trends toward cooling as well. So now these group of scientists think that they have become the new stewards of the environment and that they can regulate our environment and use our atmosphere and our oceans as physics laboratories so that they can experiment with toxic chemicals, they can experiment with all kinds of plans to reduce the amount of sunlight reaching the Earth. And this has far-reaching impacts. Well, the UK Parliament, House of Commons, released their geoengineering report, the 5th one, in March. And it's worth a read because they talk about wanting to experiment on us, even though that they know that there could be severe consequences from doing so. In other words, you could have crop losses. You could have acid rain from putting sulfur into the atmosphere, because when it rains out, they know that sulfur would cause increasing health effects, increasing asthma, and the acid rains that it would produce would have detrimental effects to forest lands and trees. Soils would become more polluted as they used different chemicals in our atmosphere and kept it there going for long periods of time. And we don't know what the consequences of this global geoengineering is going to mean, because the UK and the US would like to implement it as a worldwide program. It means that a lot of countries would not be able to consent to this program because the chemicals that would be spread would travel on the jet stream and as currents moved around the world. So we would all have the consequences from these man-made geoengineering programs. The United States House is going to release a report any day, which I will put up online immediately. The UK Commons report is up, and people can find it on my website, or they can go to House of Commons, UK Parliament, type in Global Geoengineering Governance or Geoengineering, and the reports will come up from them. So this is an issue which has broad-based implications for the entire world. And right now, anyone can start putting up a geoengineering program. They can whiten the clouds to make them more reflective. They can use salt to do that. But if they use salt, that salt could rain out over land areas, and it could salt up your soil, so it makes it less productive. The salt could salt up your drinking water supplies. It could cause salty water to fall on your mountains. And over a period of time, there could be very high environmental consequences for doing this. So I encourage everyone to start reading up on geoengineering and its consequences, because this is going to face us in the very near future, because the program for global geoengineering governance and the rules is being considered right now.
Yeah, that's not so nice. I also came across an article from the United States Air Force claiming that they will own the weather in 25 years. Did you read that?
Yes. The U.S. Air Force in 1996 put out a whole series of information articles talking about the future of war, and they talked about owning the weather would be one of the major force multipliers for controlling other countries to make them do what we want. And so not only the military, they've been doing experiments in lightning, they've been doing all kinds of weather experiments, giving money to universities and different groups, so that they're learning how to manipulate and control the weather. And it's much further along than anyone might suspect.
Yeah, I always subtract 50 years if they say we will be able to do it in 25. So, I think the masses of the people are kept in the dark. And so when they come out with something like that, it's old news, in my opinion.
It's old news, but in a sense, we've been modifying the weather, or trying to, since the 1940s. Mm-hmm. And that's why when we were using it in Vietnam, the NMOD Treaty was signed by the United States and other countries to not allow weather modification to be used in war. However, it's so subtle these days that it would, and I don't know that the various countries would enforce the NMOD treaties, because they don't understand that some of the weather events that we're experiencing are directly contributed to our experiments. Mm-hmm. And the UK Parliament admitted that weather modification was going on right now in foreign countries, and we have records here showing that they're using weather modification in the United States. And when we do it, it impacts other countries. It doesn't just stay locally, because these weather systems travel worldwide on the jet stream.
Mm-hmm. There's also, I saw maybe you know something about that. It was long ago, actually. I saw an animation of these huge ships that they were going to build, and that these ships, they would spew all kinds of steam, I think it was, in the air in order to create clouds, and add indeed some kind of salt to it. so that they would stay there. Have you ever seen any of these ships?
Oh yes, they're quite common. There's photographs of them, and what they're going to do is they would take the salt water and they would, under pressure, send it up into the atmosphere to form the particles in clouds. And so what happens is they could whiten the clouds, and they're going to be doing other experiments. I think they've already done some of them, it looks like already. And so what happens, though, is that when you form clouds and the particulates that the water forms around are salt, you're going to rain this out over land areas. And the consequences of this could be quite interesting. And also the impact of those ships on oceans, ocean climate, the cloud cover over oceans could be tremendous. And yet we don't seem to have any control at the moment over these experiments. It's time that we made sure that these can't be conducted without the consent of all the countries, rather than just to say that we're going to manipulate our environment to suit ourselves to experiment.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't like the idea either. I mean, geoengineering, first of all, the science is questionable, and where do they get the right to decide for all of the other people that are going to be impacted? Because it seems just logical to me that if you're going to make it rain in one area, then some other area is going to have a drought, right?
That's correct, and we know that from local weather modification programs here, that you can rain out 5% or 10% more rain if you see clouds in one area, but you could totally dry up another area so that you could put them in drought. So then it's going to be who owns the rain, who owns the snow, who owns the watershed, and we're going to benefit which country or which city or state over another.
Yeah. Okay, is there anything you want to mention about the BP oil disaster? Because there don't seem to be coming any questions. Oh, we lost her. Okay. Well, then I'm on my own. Let's see if we can get her back. Skype is interfering with the communication here. I hope I'm still on the air. Yeah. Okay, well, it seems that we lost the connection. Something seems to have happened in the other side of the world. So I'm on my own now. The last thing I mentioned was the BP oil disaster. And it seems to be... Oh, okay. Now, what's going on here? See if you can call him back. Yeah. We call you.
Hello?
Yes, you're back.
Yeah, sorry, I don't know what happened. You disappeared. You just went and you were gone.
Same here. Oh, it doesn't matter. We were back, you know. The question, if people have any questions, because we're not asking questions, we must be, they must be listening intently. And if you have questions, though, you can go to argusogradio.org or argusoog.org. That's ARGUSOOG radio.org. And then you find a chat link and you grab a name and you can ask questions or make any comments. But if there's anything else you want to mention about geoengineering, fine, please. But the question also still is here, and I want to tell you something about Celtic salt. But the question is here about BP oil disaster. You have anything to mention about that?
Yes. The BP oil disaster is an environmental crisis for the Gulf of Mexico and all of the inhabitants that live there, not only the people, but also the wildlife. And the impacts are going to be tremendous and be with us for years and years. And they're going to affect a lot of the marine mammals and fish that travel and breed in, even birds that breed in those areas and that have had severe problems with the oil and the Corexit. And I can tell you that the use of the Corexit is poisoning people. They're talking about it now more often. And also underwater, that toxic chemical is having its impact as well. So the food supplies is contaminated, the fish, lots of things are going on there with that. And we are concerned because our government, the United States government, is not telling the whole truth about what that subject is about either. And they're starting to pretend like, well, it's not as bad as we thought, but I think it's much worse. And all of the seafood coming out of the Gulf, none of it is tested for the Corexit. A lot of toxic chemicals, they don't test it. They smell test the fish to see if they can smell oil on the outside of the fish, and that's it. And that's not safe for us to be eating. So there are lots of things going on in the Gulf of Mexico, and I think that BP is going to try to get out of any responsibility for the entire cleanup because they know that this disaster would take years to do, and I don't think they're interested in doing that. So British Petroleum is going to be not a good word around here for a long time. But also, I don't think that our government is doing enough to protect its citizens either.
Mm-hmm.
But the environmental disaster with the loss of wildlife and will be felt all over the world because there's so much water that goes into the Gulf of Mexico from the Atlantic Ocean and travels around the oceans. So I think you're going to see some severe losses in some things in the short term and in the long term.
Yeah, I don't think it's even over yet, to be honest.
It's not.
No, they kept it, but it seems to be leaking. And also there keep coming reports about other leaks in the same area. And I find it very questionable that the Coast Guard is acting like police for British Petroleum to keep people away from there. I find that very appalling, to be honest. And
so do we.
Go ahead.
So do we. We think it's appalling as well.
Yeah. Did you, just a side note, did you hear any news about people getting killed in Arizona and the border with Mexico there?
It happens from time to time when we have drug smugglers come through. We have various people coming through the border. Then there have been incidents there where people have gotten killed, yes.
Yeah. I saw this clip from Fox News. They had the sheriff on, and the sheriff said that he had no control over the situation any longer. That's a red flag. I mean, seriously, something had to be done. But then when the governor goes and asks for help at Obama, they get a sue on their ass. I'm sorry. They get sued. And this is ridiculous, isn't it?
Well, we're not enforcing our own laws, and if the United States government would enforce its own laws, that would solve most of this problem.
Yeah.
But since the U.S. government isn't enforcing our own laws on the books, then some governors in some areas step up to take action into their own hands. So this is quite interesting how this works out.
Well, it doesn't seem that any form of government is working in Arizona, because we had a broadcast here on Argus Oak Radio with a militia leader called Hammer Down, and he's telling us that actually only the militia is fighting these insurgents that are actually invading the United States, as he tells us. Well, that's not good. But let me tell you about the Celtic salt. It's good news, I think, if you've never heard of it. There's a place in France where they collect salt in a old way, in the way the Celtics used to do it. And then they collect that and they put it on a big mountain, and then if it rains, they quickly pull over a cover so that the salt doesn't get too wet, because it's supposed to have some moisture in it, about 8% or something. And then the salt crystallizes into cubic-like forms, and it's gray. And you can buy it in kilos, or 25 kilos, or 4 kilos, or 1 kilo even in some towns here in the Netherlands. And this Celtic salt contains 85 minerals. And because getting a message here that because of the magnesium, the salt needs some moisture. So magnesium is one of those 85 minerals that are in that salt. And this salt can be used, it seems, as a refreshener for the earth, or the fertilizer, right? So instead of using the things that we do now, we should be using this Celtic salt. Have you ever heard of this?
No, I haven't. I don't know anything about it, but if you ever have the time, you could send me some information.
Yes, we will. I will.
Links.
Yeah, we have lots of info about that. We did a show on it also, explaining, we will give that also to you. No, it's no problem. Explaining how to use it. You can even drink it yourself. You have to, of course, be careful how you use it if you drink it yourself. I did it myself. You first make a solution in a small pot from 1/3 salt and 2/3 water, and then you shake that until the salt is gone. And then you take 1 spoon in a big glass of water, 1 teaspoon in a big glass of water. So that's very little. And you drink that up. And I did that, and the person that introduced this salt to us, he said, you will find that your body is going to ask for more. And I said, well, if that is true, I will find out, because I know what he's talking about. If people learn to listen to their body, that would be a good thing too. And so I tried it out, and I found out, indeed, my body is asking for more. 2 days later, it's give me some more of that. And then so at one point it stopped. So I must have had enough of it. But I think it's a good thing, those minerals. I think your body could use that, especially since our food seems to be under attack so much.
Well, it's good to have natural things. It definitely is.
Yeah. And I don't know. We have on Argus Road Radio, we have also a English-speaking radio host. I'm still so nervous I can't even form sentences. Jesus Christ. But maybe he has found an address in America, because we told him about this some time ago. He was very interested. And then he was going to search for some someone that may have this Celtic salt available in the United States. But if I must, I have no problem sending you some. That's no problem also.
Well, also let your guests, the people that are listening, know that they can send me an email at info@californiaskywatch.com. Yeah. And I'll be happy to respond to their questions later if they have any they'd like to send or information. I'd be happy to respond to them. So they could respond at info, INFO, at California Skywatch, SKYWATCH.com.
Okay, that's good. There's a US link indeed for you. Can you see that?
No.
Okay, are you looking? We have this chat window here, and yeah, this is live radio, but I don't really care, you know. We have this chat window here in Skype. You know what I'm talking about?
Well, we're working on it at this end.
Okay, because we posted some link there that will take you to the United States Celtic Sea Salt Department.
Oh, okay. That's neat.
And, if you can't find it, don't worry. Just tell me, and I will email it to info@californiaskywatch.com.
Yeah, that would be the best to do.
Okay, that's no problem.
Okay.
I will do that.
I'm not on my computer, so if you send it to my, it'd be great.
Yeah, that's good. I will do that. No problem. Okay, is there anything you want to mention, or shall I just pick a subject?
Well, I think that I'd like to say that a lot of people in the United States are going to start opposing these geoengineering projects. We're going to start opposing many more of these upper atmospheric projects as well, where they're conducting atmospheric experiments. And we don't like that our atmosphere, our air, and the water, the Earth itself is going to be used as an experimental physics laboratory. Mm-hmm. So more and more of us are becoming organized to say no and to educate others about the subject. So I hope that you will, in other words, understand that I'm not criticizing any other country. I'm just saying that we're at the root of some of this. And I think it's time that American citizens started standing up to say no. So there are groups of us here in the States that are doing that. And hopefully our voices will become heard on a much broader and wider basis so that other people in other areas can also learn about what's going on here in the United States, and that we're not all for all of these things, that we oppose some things like geoengineering and genetically modified foods. We're not all going to stand by and say, yes, we're just going to, we like this idea. So it's the government may be moving us, trying to move us in that direction, but we're definitely going to be trying to move in an opposite direction. So there's going to be a lot of discussion and a lot going back and forth. I don't know what the outcome will be, but at least we can inform as many people as possible.
Mm-hmm. I also noticed on your website, well, I don't know if it's yours, but skywatch.com, californiaskywatch.com.
Yes.
Videos you have up there about HAARP.
Yes, I've got information about HAARP and information about geoengineering and some other topics on that site. That's
so
correct.
Is there a connection between HAARP and geoengineering then?
I think there's a connection, a big connection between HAARP and some of the upper atmospheric testing that we're doing. And some of that is directly related to something our U.S. Navy just, an experiment that we just did on September 19th last year. And what they did is they shot a rocket up to put an aluminum oxide dust cloud over the east coast of the United States on the Atlantic side in order to conduct testing, not only for HAARP testing, but other tests. And this aluminum oxide dust cloud then will travel around the world, and the aluminum oxide will come down on all of us eventually. So these experiments and using our atmosphere as a physics laboratory, what we do in the United States has the potential to impact other countries as well. So it isn't just that we're doing it and it's okay, but we aren't getting permission from other countries and talking about the impacts it will have on the people of other countries. So the Navy, it's called CARE. It's Charged Aerosol Release Experiment. It's on my website under U.S. Navy. And it's something that you have to realize that the Navy is going to want to do more. They've already talked about doing one this year again. So there are going to be more of these type of atmospheric experiments, and that this is going to have broad implications for everyone around the world, because the atmosphere belongs to everyone. It doesn't just belong to the United States.
You called it CARE?
CARE. C-A-R-E. It's Charged Aerosol Release Experiment.
Yeah, they choose those words with something in mind, I believe, sometimes.
Oh, yes, they do. So it's not, a lot of information is online. People can go to the NASA website and look it up. They can also just Google in Charged Aerosol Release Experiment, and information will come up about that as well.
Yeah. Is it, I say you're also, we also talked about the sea, and you mentioned plankton, no, what was it? Algae, right?
Well, I mentioned ocean iron fertilization.
Oh,
and what that does is that when you fertilize the ocean with iron particulates, what it does is it causes algae blooms. But we know from research now that governments and private companies are engaged in this ocean iron fertilization. And when they do that, they create these algae blooms, which are eventually harmful to marine life. So we're working on destroying our oceans, along with destroying our atmosphere and our weather, because we're beginning to like the idea that we can conduct all these experiments with impunity and not suffer any consequences. And I think that we're already seeing the consequences. We're beginning to experience more and more of them as human health deteriorates from some of these experiments.
Do you know if it's correct that the ocean is also responsible for the oxygen in the air?
Yes.
Okay.
And the weather. And in other words, it all works together. It's worked together for millions of years. And the audacity for certain governments and certain agencies and universities and scientists to think that they can play with our universe with impunity is amazing to me, because I really believe that we could be on the way to destroying ourselves just through the use of our experiments, or human health may not be as good. There's a lot of implications, and I think that we need to understand the implications of some of these experiments that are being conducted. And they're enjoying the putting more of them out for the public to see, thinking that, well, they're doing it for our own good. But I don't think they're doing it for our own good. I think they're either doing it because they want to experiment, or they want to control us in some way. So it may not be good for us.
Yeah. I clicked on the Peterson perspective and thought this was nice. You have a picture there looking good. I also have a picture on Argusog Radio, so people get at least an idea of what the host looked like. But I think it's good that what it says here, because Rosalind Peterson offers insight and commentary on the compelling issues surrounding our health, agriculture, climate change, geoengineering, experimental weather modification, and more. It is our hope that you will find this collection of views and opinions interesting, informative, and worthwhile. Ultimately, we hope that you become inspired to act. And indeed, that's what I found so good about it. It's also the reason why I make radio. I try to get my listeners to act upon the information that is being presented. Either check it out, confirm it for yourself, do your own investigations, and indeed act on it. It reminds me of William Roberts. He's a radio host, And he's got a radio show that's called Become Vocal Local. And he says that as globalization is coming to a town near you, you must come up to your own town, make sure that you have a voice somehow, either by getting elected or attending to meetings that are open to the public, and voice yourself. Because it does seem to help to talk to people that are in lower governmental positions, it seems.
Yes, it does, and it's action at actually all levels. And you have to start at the local level, but then it works up. But if we don't educate ourselves and know what's going on, other people will make these decisions for us without our consent, and that's the key. Yeah,
they call them stakeholders. Did you know that Obama signed a new, you probably do know, new legislation because of this BP oil disaster?
He signed new legislation?
Yeah, executive order even.
Oh, I don't know that I know what the latest one was.
Yeah, it's pretty new. I think he only signed it about a couple of days ago, and he created a new agency.
He did.
Yeah, it's something called the Commission on Ocean Security or something.
That's interesting.
Yeah, and there's going to be all kinds of regulations, and it's probably, because I haven't been able to dig into it deep enough, but according to Mike Chambers, who's also a radio host, it's all to do with Agenda 21. Now, you know that, right?
Oh, yes, I understand Agenda 21, but I'm not sure that I am all in favor of this. It depends on what they're going to be doing. I'll have to read about it and then let you know.
Yeah. I'll send you some links also regarding this new executive order.
Thank you.
And it's the reason why I think also it's a false flag operation. People say it's an accident, but I don't really believe that. There are so many things that are strange, so to speak. And it just reminds me of my investigations into the happenings of 11 September 2001. There are so many strange things there that it doesn't make sense.
No, you're right. It doesn't make sense. And there's many questions that were raised by not only 9/11, but also there were many questions raised about this BP oil spill. And I think that one of the things that the Obama administration wants to do is push forward this climate bill, which is a Ponzi scheme. It's a cap and trade Ponzi scheme, which allows corporations to buy and sell offsets so they can keep polluting more down the road for the next 7 or 8 years with no reduction in greenhouse gases. Now, it isn't an issue about global warming. It's an issue that this is going to create some sort of economic bubble that will benefit Wall Street and the banks. That's why they're written into the United States bill. So I don't see anything in the climate bill that is going to reduce or do anything about climate problems or reduce greenhouse gases for a long time into the future. And that's why many of us are beginning to oppose the bill, because we see it as just a tax and then a corporate financial Ponzi scheme. So quite honestly, many of us are working so that it doesn't pass, because we see it for what it is. It's going to revitalize nuclear power in the United States, which means that there will be very little money go into alternative energy sources. And it's going to be costly because we'll be dependent on uranium mining, fossil fuels used in that process, and we're going to have nuclear waste we don't know what to do with. We can't store it now. So the climate bill is really not a climate bill. It's a scheme to enrich Wall Street and the banks more than anything else, and it has really nothing to do with climate except that the government likes to have that in the title of the bill.
Yeah.
But I would say one other thing before we run out of time here that's really important, and that I have been opposing for a very long time, for a year and a half now, and that has to do with the United States Navy. The United States Navy has divided up the Atlantic and the Pacific and the Gulf of Mexico around the shores for warfare testing programs.
Oh.
And one of the things that's really important for everyone to know is that some of these programs are now underway, and this is for testing. This is missile exercises. This is submarine exercises. This is high frequency and mid-range frequency sonar experiments, explosive detonations, anti-submarine warfare. They've got missile exercises, gunnery exercises, bombing exercises, sinking exercises, and mine warfare training. And this is over some land areas in the United States, but this is also in the Hawaiian Islands area, the Marianas in the Pacific. This is in Southern California in the Pacific, and Northern California, Oregon, and Washington. There are major plans for the Gulf of Mexico and major plans for areas in the Atlantic, including the Atlantic Island areas. These plans will impact every single marine sanctuary. These will impact 11.7 million marine mammals. That doesn't include the fish. That doesn't include birds. This includes just marine mammals. So the Navy.
Yep, I heard of that.
And what I'm going to read to you is a quote from in a letter that was written on June 19th, 2009.
Yeah.
And it's from the California senators, Barbara Boxer and Senator Dianne Feinstein, and part of it reads in effect.
Okay.
It's quote, in many regions, the Navy plans to increase the number of its exercises or expand the areas in which they may occur, and virtually every coastal state will be affected. Some exercises may occur in the nation's most biologically sensitive marine habitats, including national marine sanctuaries, breeding habitats for the endangered North Atlantic right whale. In all, the Navy anticipates more than 2.3 million takes, significant disruptions in marine mammal foraging, breeding, and other essential behaviors per year, or 11.7 million takes over the course of a 5-year permit, end quote. Now, what a take means is, in definition, it means as hunt, harass, capture, kill, collect, harm, pursue, hunt, shoot, wound, kill, trap, or engage in any such conduct. And what this means is that we will have an impact on worldwide marine mammals because they all migrate around the world. We will have impact on their food supply, fishing habitats. And right now, many of us in the United States have united and have begun to fight against these about a dozen 5-year warfare testing programs in all the major oceans. And concerned because other countries do not know that the United States Navy is and the United States government is going to war on our oceans. And there is no excuse to be doing this. There is no excuse for the Navy to go to war on every ocean area. In other words, that affects everyone in every country. The food supplies will dwindle very quickly because of the use of the sonar and the use of all of these detonations and bombing exercises. And so I'm just letting your audience know that the United States is up to something which many of us within the United States are going to object to, but that their countries will be impacted by this as well. And there's no excuse for the Navy our Navy to go to war against our oceans and the marine mammals and other sea life in it. And so I'm going to make that a very firm statement that I am opposed to this endeavor completely.
Yeah. I believe you're making progress, though, because I've heard of this outside from you, of these animals being killed indeed. And what struck me is the total doublethink that is used here, because why would you have warfare conductions if you're supposed to live in a globalized world?
That's correct. And just who is the Navy going to go to war against?
Exactly.
And when you consider that they're using red and white phosphorus, which are banned by the Geneva Convention in their testing, depleted uranium, and a whole host of toxic chemicals which are going to wind up in our ocean and in the food supply. In other words, there is no excuse for the United States to be engaging in this kind of activity. And I am hoping that, in other words, as other nations find out about this, that they will object to this mass produced massacre by the U.S. Navy.
And when is this supposed to happen?
Well, some of it is just started in the last year in Southern California and in the Hawaiian Islands ranges, and others areas are planning for these 5-year warfare programs, and we're going to have to fend them off one at a time at this time, because each environmental impact statement is for one of these ranges, is what they call, and these test ranges. And so they've divided up the United States into these test ranges. However, South America is going to be impacted. Every country that enjoys seafood is going to have impacts from this. The tourism industry will suffer, the fishing industry, communities that live along the coast that depend on marine life for food, island areas, they'll all be impacted by this. And we have to realize that, in other words, we're all in this together, but the United States needs to curb this policy immediately. And we're going to work to try and get them to stop this testing policy, because it's not good. And the Obama administration is not so far putting a stop to it, and we object to the fact that they're not putting a stop to it immediately.
Yeah. He also hasn't put a stop to the continuance, I believe the word is continuance, continuance of government that was enacted on September 11, 2001 and is renewed every year. Bush has renewed it every year, and now I believe Obama even promised that he wouldn't, but he did a couple of weeks ago. So
well, the only thing is that he's following the Bush policies pretty closely.
Yeah.
So many of us who supported him have been very disappointed in some of his policies.
Yeah, very. I hope that somehow it woke some people up, because he was very popular. Yeah.
Well, he's still popular, but the thing is that I think that people are beginning to see that as he goes through policies which people don't like, that may change over time, because he's promoting this genetically modified foods with the people he appoints to these various positions within his government. He's keeping the war going and financing the war, borrowing money to do it, which is not good. Yeah. So we're engaged in a number of policies which more and more people in the United States are beginning to oppose. And I think that I just don't want everyone to think that just because we live here, we are in agreement with everything our government does all of the time.
No.
So we have to oppose those things which harm the environment, for example.
Yeah.
And we don't want our atmosphere used as a physics laboratory. So we're trying to work on speaking out on these issues, because not only to educate others, but to let them know that many of us don't agree with these policies either.
Yeah. Well, probably most of my listeners are aware of the fact that governments don't represent their constituents. So, I find that a psychological point as well, that some countries are seen as the bad guy and this is the good guy. So it's a psychological game that's played on people to give them enemies. And we don't have enemies, actually. There are no enemies. And it's the Cold War, for instance, and the First World War and the Second World War, they were not for the reasons that were given to us. In a sense, you could say that they were fake wars. And so, I hope that the listeners indeed understand that it's not the American people or the Dutch people or the Germans, for that matter, that are the bad guys here, indeed.
Well, governments take us into war for various reasons, mostly to fund the military-industrial complex, and corporations make a lot of money during war. But in addition, though, I think that there's the agenda is much greater and much more difficult because of the increase in our ability to do things in our technology. And this makes it much worse. The impacts are going to be much worse because of this increase in technology. So, and so this is why the impact that we have on the earth is more now than it was 100 years ago or 50 years ago, is because this increasing ability to test things and experiment and conduct different experiments is increasing exponentially, much quicker than the public is even finding out about what's going on.
Yeah, it does seem that the technological advancements, if you can call them that, I rather call them handouts, but it does seem that they are way ahead of other evolvements, evolutions, perhaps. I'm looking for the right word here, but like, for instance, the research into genetics, like where the human genome and things like that come from, and what you can do with all that, and the questions arise about morality and stuff. And it's getting complicated with all those technological advancements, indeed.
Well, sure, and also the thing is that I think that ethics and morals are going by the wayside in order for people to just experiment or think that they're gods on this field and they can do whatever they want. And so what happens is that you have these people for prestige or power or whatever reason, money, greed, whatever reason that they want to experiment, that they do it without realizing the consequences of their action. They think of it only as probably maybe pure science, instead of thinking that what they're discovering is going to be used not for the benefit of mankind, but to the detriment of mankind. And that's what's really frightening. Yeah.
I believe that most of them, though, do know what they're doing. It reminds me of a piece of text that I read from a document written by the Club of Rome, and it's headed something like the enemy of humanity is humanity itself, and it talks about global warming and all kinds of disasters, and that they needed that to unify the people to stand behind the solution that they, of course, already have ready, because it's another Hegelian dialectic that they're playing on us.
That's correct. And you see, the thing is that when they say they have a solution like geoengineering, we'll put up particles and chemicals, we'll reduce the amount of sunlight and we'll cool you down. Well, that's a very simplistic idea, but it's very complicated when you're talking about the consequences, the cumulative effects, the synergistic effects of all these programs. So I don't think they think about that in those terms. I think that they think about it on an entirely different level. And so they think about it in ways that they can benefit in some way. And the detrimental consequences, well, you're the unwashed masses, you can be sacrificed. So most of the people are going to become guinea pigs unless we say no to this.
Yeah. Okay, I'm going to repeat one more time the email address. That's info@californiaskywatch.com. If you have any questions for Rosalind. And we are indeed coming to the end of the show. So if there's anything you want to mention, it's not like we're exactly quitting at 10 o'clock. So you can take a few minutes if there's anything you want to mention.
Well, what I'd like to thank your audience for, and I'd like to thank you for the show. It's been an honor.
And historically opposed to secret societies, to secret oaths, and to secret proceedings.
Thanks all. Take care, everybody.
A new world order is emerging.
An inside job? How dare you? How dare you?
To create, so to say, mass-produced models of human beings arranged in some kind of a scientific